Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of The Crisis Files. In each case file, we explore ripped from the headlines controversies and hot topics. Entertainment contributor Paul McGuire-Grimes is here. Paul is a card-carrying member of the Critics' Choice Association and the person we turn to for all things Hollywood. Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, a Hollywood power couple embroiled in a salacious lawsuit and countersuit with Blake's co-star and film director Justin Baldoni. The 2025 Oscar run saw some nominees shunned over AI issues and posts from their past. Are there new rules of the game in Hollywood? Paul is here for the case file I call Hollywood Fighting. Paul, in case file number 128, Hot Takes, one of my predictions for 2025 was Hollywood influence reimagined, where the power of the icon is behind us. Are we there yet?
I think that we're getting there as we're seeing who we listen to, who we follow, who we give our precious time to really shift over very popular people, podcasters, influencers, content creators, people that may or may not be experts in their field, but we're giving them space versus people like you and I that are journalists, that are entertainment reporters, that are people that are in the industry that have the decades of career and experience to talk about these types of things. I personally feel sometimes brushed aside for the people that have numbers, that have the social media following. And I was just seeing a Instagram, I don't remember which actor it was now, but now they were talking about how producers are looking for their cast to have a certain number of social media followers.
Wow.
And in order for them to want to make their movie, or they'll put a budget out depending on if it can reach an audience based on social media following. And I think it was Elle Fanning that's also talked about that too, where she was skipped over for a Marvel role because of not being on social media and whatnot. So
Wow.
I think there's a fine line there for actors and entertainers to want to keep their private life private, but also knowing that they may be missing out on jobs if they don't have the TikTok followers, if they don't want to promote the movie on Instagram and whatnot.
All right, we do have to get into this whole Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni situation. I was pretty stunned when that first broke.
100%. To catch people up, there's a movie called It Ends With Us based on a very popular novel by Colleen Hoover. When the movie came out in 2024, during the premiere and the press, people noticed that Blake, the cast, Colleen Hoover were not doing any press with Justin Baldoni. And they basically all unfollowed him on social media. So that put a clear message out that it's very much a us versus him. And that really took me by surprise because I followed Justin for many years now. He's got Minnesota ties. He's a really great guy. He's talked about men's mental health, masculine toxicity. And to then see all of them against him was very strange to me.
And it's almost like, what's up here?
What is going on? And then even throughout the press too, where Blake's interviews were very la-di-da, let's talk about flowers, and just very surface level.
And not on point.
Not on point for what the movie. The movie is about domestic abuse. And Justin was trying to bring up those issues in his interviews. And then we were seeing past interviews that Blake has done that don't put her in a good light. And you're like, what is going on here? The reality is probably somewhere in the middle with these two. Then cut to the end of the year when you see this massive New York Times piece by Megan Twohey and a couple of others who are reputable journalists that do this whole smear campaign that Justin and his PR team apparently had against Blake throughout that whole press run.
So this New York Times article was critical of Justin Baldoni.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
Very much against him, showing tweets and emails that was supposedly to smear Blake, to smear the campaign, to get these social media bot farms out there to discredit her, to bring up all these past interviews that I just talked about. So then you're like, oh, maybe this is not the Justin I know and thought of. Maybe Blake is in the right here. And you're like, okay, so you try to go along with that. Well, then Justin and his team have a countersuit. I don't know all the legal language, but for $400 million. So we're not talking about pennies. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars from one side to the next, where he's like, actually, here's the whole conversation of that text that Blake did not show. Here's the full conversation here. Here's the full text email thread about this scene or how we shot this.
And tried to make it seem like what Blake and the New York Times article were doing, because there is a lawsuit against the New York Times by Justin, that was innuendo or partial.
Yes.
Truth and not the whole story.
Right. So now Justin's trying to give context to the whole story. And one of the things that kind of came out up in this is how Ryan Reynolds get involved. Ryan Reynolds is the husband to Blake Lively, and apparently during the strike wrote a scene in It Ends With Us when he should not have been writing during the strike. And why is Ryan getting involved in Blake's movie?
Exactly.
And who has power here in this movie? Because Justin is the director and lead male actor. Blake is a producer and lead female actress. There were reports of who gets final edit, whose edit tested better. And it's become very messy.
And meantime, that should have all been in writing as people were signing on to do the film.
Right. So where is all of that?
Exactly. Interesting. Well, if things stay on the current time track, it's set to go to trial in 2026. Now, so much could change between now and 2026.
And it really seems to be changing. When the Saturday Night Live special aired recently, and Ryan Reynolds and Blake were there, and Tina Fey and Amy Poehler made a little joke to Ryan in the audience in this Q&A segment, and Blake was kind of taken off guard. If you look at that reaction shot, she was like stunned that even got brought up and was like worried about what Ryan was going to say.
The little piece I saw, I think he handled it well by saying, what have you heard?
Oh, yeah,
and
right.
just trying to be funny. And I mean, if you're going to show up for an event that big, the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live, you've got to just go along with it. Right. Otherwise, don't show.
And that was clearly a pre-approved bit. That was all rehearsed.
Right. None of it was ad-lib,
right.
Which is most of our show. Our show is all ad-lib, pretty much. So, okay. My late stepfather used to say when I was in TV news, honey, no media is bad media. And I said, well, I think there is bad media. So my question for you, Paul, because you're covering all these people and these stories, what's the difference between good hype and bad hype? Is there bad hype?
I think there is bad hype. I don't think that there is a no press is bad press type of mentality anymore, because what you say on social media or in the news or in interviews has a severe fallout. And we've seen that time and time again. So it's mind-boggling to me when people feel like they can say whatever they want without any consequences. Yeah. And you see that with the actress Carla Sofia Gascon and her movie Amelia Perez, which I thought was one of the best movies of 2024. Like, it was on my top 10 list. When I saw it, I think I screened it in October before what we're going to talk about. I was so amazed by her. I was so amazed by the cast. It was a movie that I just had never seen before.
And it definitely got so many nominations during the 2025 award cycle.
Yes.
And awards. And I mean,
it like blew up at the Golden Globes in like, it won Best Picture, Musical Comedy. Zoe Saldana has been winning Best Supporting Actress across the board. And people did not know who Carla Sofia Gascon was until this movie. And she is a trans actress. She plays Amelia in the film. The movie is about a trans woman who used to be a former drug cartel leader and is now living her truth and trying to rebuild her own life and career and establishment. And throughout that campaign, if you will, previous tweets of hers resurfaced. A journalist found them and brought them to light. And she essentially been, for lack of a better word, because I hate this word, canceled,
right,
because of how offensive her tweets were, how awful they were. And her acting nomination was not rescinded by the Academy. But what Netflix did was, we're not going to really campaign you anymore, which means you're not going to be at all of the events that we would typically invite the cast to. And now there's this light shadow over the film based on her previous tweet. And she's apologized for it. She's saying, I wasn't in a right space at that time. I'm sorry that these were offensive. Like, she's acknowledged it. But then people don't look at that movie the same anymore. They kind of cast judgment over the whole thing.
Right, which also just begs the question, do we jump to judge too soon? Because everyone has a past, and there are parts of everyone's past I'm sure they are not very proud of. So it's a topic for another day, but this is very interesting that your past really doesn't go away anymore in the world of social media.
So be careful when you are posting things, when you've maybe had one too many things to drink. But my point is, like, it unfortunately doesn't just affect her. And I think people forget that. It's now affecting, like, the director, Jacques Audiard, did not really want to be associated with her. It's casting this.
As you say, a spell over a dark cloud over the entire movie. So it will be interesting to see the future of that main actor, what happens moving forward.
Yes.
Right.
Does Carla have a career after this? Hard to say.
Right. There are so many channels now, and that is something you and I have talked about on the show in the past. Does that lead to a dilution of interest and influence?
Yes, because I think people can only handle so much content. If you think about how much social media there is, how many news outlets there are, how many streaming services there, you are inundated with that so fast that you can't. I think they've done studies about this, don't quote me on it, but like, you can't keep up with it all. You're scrolling through TikTok so fast and only hearing headlines, only hearing someone's quick hot take, and then you're going here and seeing
And we
something
wonder
of it.
why we have mental health issues.
Correct. You almost have to take a step back to figure out, how do we take a step back to protect our own mental health so that we are not being inundated with negativity, with a counter viewpoint that we maybe don't want to hear, so that we don't just get drowned in that. And we see that too with, like, you don't even know where to turn to sometimes. And people I've heard say, I don't even know where to find news anymore, in terms of news as an unbiased news.
Right, absolutely.
I don't know who to
What's a
believe
true
anymore.
journalist?
What's a true journalist? I don't even know where to find this show or that show on a lighter end, because everything is streaming. I only have so many services. I only have so many time. And then it becomes content. And I have to catch myself saying that too, because I hate that word. Like, I don't want to just talk about the things that I do as content, when so much it's like, well, your social media post, or I'm trying to do all this social media activity, when that is kind of content. But like, reviews, interviews that I have, that's not just content.
Well,
you know?
it's your life. It's your
Yes,
world.
right.
But yes, to the consumer, it is content.
Yeah.
As we are all trying to be in front of people, to stay relevant. The Crisis Files itself trying to grow as a podcast, more listeners all the time, more engagement. How do we make that happen?
And how does something maybe catch on TikTok that it does on Instagram? And I've been trying to think about that lately too. Like, how did this video blow up on TikTok and yet nothing on Instagram? But it's the same video, the same caption, maybe the same load time. It's wild. Maybe I'm just too old.
No, you're not. You're not. But one thing I do want to get into is these social justice topics. And I think about the 2025 Super Bowl and the commercials, which, in my opinion, most of them fell very flat. And several of them were preaching at us. No one seems to be able to just have a light, fun, entertaining commercial anymore. There were a couple that really tugged at the heartstrings, which I definitely would applaud. But most years, I at least find 5 or 6 that are so well done, they're amazing. And this year, it was hard to find 1 or 2.
I think there's a line right now on, and I struggle with this myself, how do you talk either about entertainment or about something that isn't like politically related? And that's a very broad term, but like, I feel like sometimes for some people, if you don't even talk about it, then you're ignoring it or you're being complicit. But then if you go too far and you talk about it all the time, then people don't even want to hear it anymore. Or you're kind of speaking to a deaf ear.
Right, it kind of becomes white noise.
It becomes white noise. So where is that fine line of staying engaged, you giving your opinion, wanting to seem in the moment or in the topic or understanding what's going on, versus not at all? And I think people are kind of caught in that whole medium there. And I think with Super Bowl ads, sometimes companies want to take a stand against something or for something, and then they kind of do it very gracefully because they like don't want to get called out on it. So they do it kind of half-assed, and then it's either half-assed and it doesn't make a noise, or they go really hard and it backfires completely.
This is where when you get away from what your brand is authentically about, because there are some brands that nobody in the world is asking you to take a stand.
Right.
I mean, maybe you sell Jell-O, and I don't care to do anything else with you but buy Jell-O, okay?
Yeah.
And that's even a brand in itself. Whatever you'd call that generically, I don't know.
Gelatin?
Gelatin, thank you. Whatever gelatin is.
But it's funny how we have become so accustomed to a brand over something than what the generic, like Kleenex, no one calls it a tissue anymore. You're like, hand me a Kleenex.
I've never called it a tissue.
Right.
So these are the kinds of things that, pop culture and the evolution of, right? So fascinating. Love dissecting them with you. Would you say today, in our day and age, there is a recipe for a successful icon? Or, because you've said the day of the icon's not over.
Not over.
It's just definitely changed. It's saturated almost with choices for the consumer. I would love for people who want to become actors and artists of any kind that you're focused on the work and not your reputation around it. It seems that good work generally always builds good reputation.
It should.
If you're not committing any crimes while you're doing the good work.
Right. It should. And I do try to think that the work should speak for itself, whether it's for you as the person, you as the work that you're providing. I could promote a lot of interviews that I do or be on social media, but I also know my voice and my tone that becomes part of the work. So I tend to be very energetic, positive, outgoing, and I bring that into the interviews. But that's part of the interviews also speaking for themselves. But this is a hard line because in terms of celebrity and entertainment, you have people that take a stand against something and they're either rewarded for it or there's backlash. Or you can rise above all of it, like a Dolly Parton, who literally everyone loves.
Yes.
You know, she's been around for decades. She has let her work speak for herself. She has let her positivity speak for itself. She's also kind of like Kristen Chenoweth. They're both religious people, but it's not religion where I'm going to shame everyone around me.
And shove it in your face.
And shove it in your face. There's a fine line there. And I would say that both of them are icons. At least in my world, they're icons. Maybe not in anyone else's world, but like, I think that there's a very interesting way of, if you want to take a stand about something, do it and then hold by it. But you also can't be afraid that there will be backlash.
And what I would say as a crisis strategist is ask yourself first, do I need to take a stand? And in fact, I learned, I am not in AA, but I know people who are in AA, and and I might not be quoting it exactly right. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? And does it need to be said by me? Those are 3 really good editorial filters that when you have a thought or an idea that I need to go post or I need to go share, putting it through some filters before you actually go online and have a digital footprint. Because once there's a digital footprint, you can never erase it. And these are the kinds of things the crisis strategist in me wants people to be teaching our young people to be living by, because you can't take away the past action, as the actors you told us about has been living hell through the awards cycle of 2025 because of her past. These are some of the things to be thinking about. I'm not ever trying to censure someone because I'm very much a believer in free speech. And part of the United States problem right now is people are getting mad at each other for expressing opinions. That is actually your right as an American, or even if you live in this country and you're not an American, you're supposed to be a citizen. You're supposed to be able to express and not have backlash just for the act of expressing.
Yes, and I think that's where the line sometimes it gets blurred of people using First Amendment to say whatever I want to say.
But that's why the filters are important.
Yes.
We do need to self-regulate and self-edit.
Because there will be consequences. People may not want to support you, and that's their right too. You may not get arrested because you wrote something stupid on Facebook, but maybe your business takes a hit. And we've seen that recently.
Right. I always go to this example. In the United States, for burning a flag, you cannot be prosecuted. Now, if you burn a flag and kill someone, you can be prosecuted for killing someone. Burning a flag does not mean you will automatically prosecuted. Do I want you to burn a flag?
No.
No. But that is like the simplest way I can describe what this country stands for. So for every right of freedom of speech, expression, religion, whatever that freedom is, there are consequences if we express those rights. And it is important that we're diligent and we're discerning as we express those rights. Okay, so a hot topic that you have gotten into with us in the past that was part of the issues during the Hollywood strikes, we're now at a new phase with it, artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. It's still scary to a lot of people.
You can't turn on your computer or your phone without having AI do something for you or in your face. Now, we're seeing this in Hollywood right now because of a movie called The Brutalist by Brady Corbet, also the talk of awards season. It's 3.5 hours long, an excellent movie made on a very small budget. And one of the things that people loved about this movie is how it was very old-fashioned in its filmmaking, its themes, its approach at having an intermission in the middle of the movie. But then it's kind of come out that the editor talked about how they used AI to strengthen Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones's Hungarian accent. And not just like their accents were poor, so let's beef them up a bit with AI. It was they're speaking some Hungarian dialogue in the film. So they just wanted to enhance it to make it sound a little bit more authentic for that dialogue itself. And the editor is Hungarian. And his name is David Jansko, who talks about how he is Hungarian. So he fed his voice into an AI machine to then use that as part of the Hungarian dialogue. So it kind of
merged Adrian Brody's voice and this
editor's together.
Voice.
Yes. And it was a way to do it at a like cheaper and faster scale because this movie had a small budget. They'd been in post-production forever on this movie because of just the effort that it took. And then there was some other thought about AI being used in creating some other background shots or like very small like micro blueprint that because he's an architect that they used AI quickly to do that versus a whole digital effect rendering. So there's controversy there because we just had these strikes about AI in the performance space.
Being used in place of humans.
Yes, bringing humans back from the dead for their work or writing scripts using AI. Like, let's just crank out a Batman movie. Look, ChatGPT. So that was banned. So it's this fine line now of like, well, where can we use it in filmmaking or not?
Well, it seems at least, and I don't have every layer of the story, but to me, it seems like it wasn't upfront. So we heard about it after the fact. So then after all the awards nominations came out, and then that's what makes it shady. And that does cast a light then on any actor who allowed that to happen and didn't right up front share that in their own social media. Right. This is happening. Like, I got a boost from AI.
Yeah.
Hey, this is
And maybe
cool.
Adrian Brody didn't even know that until this came. Who knows? He could have recorded all of his stuff. He could have done the whole ADR process afterwards and may not even have known that it was enhanced until this or until he heard the movie and was like.
So where do you think this is going to go, Mr. Critics' Choice Association member?
There's a dangerous precedent here, but I think that because of this backlash and it's now coming to light that hopefully it won't be used. And I think that the industry needs to be really smart about stopping that up front so that there aren't these little tweaks here and there, that there aren't posters being made with AI versus an actual artist rendering a poster. It doesn't need to be a Drew Struzan like hand-drawn poster, but it can be like a digitally created poster, or that there are FX houses out there that are working to make these big Marvel movies so that we aren't having AI do all that. And what is the difference between like AI versus like actual technology and programs that are built to do this and the artists that are doing it? So we either need to stop this now so it doesn't get far, or just succumb to the fact that this will be happening.
Yeah, because it's a bit of a wild, wild west right now.
Yes, because there aren't a lot of gatekeeping here yet.
Yeah, well, lots more I'm sure we will get into with you on that topic on future editions of The Crisis Files. Get more Paul on YouTube and his website, Paul's Trip to the Movies. Today's case file is powered by Mall of America. Mall of America. Great shopping. A dazzling and dizzying variety of attractions and restaurants. Did you realize Mall of America also hosts hundreds of events each year? Everything from high-fashion runway shows to visits from the hottest musicians. Pop-up celebrations ahead of movie premieres. Charity-related walks and holiday-themed experiences. You never know what you will find at our mall. For upcoming events and happenings, check out mallofamerica.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at The Crisis Files. Go to our website, thecrisisfiles.com, to catch up on all case files in our case file library. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.